Before the calendars of men were carved in bone and ash, there rose a city whose name was struck from memory with deliberate hands. It stood upon a plateau of white stone, where the sun shone pale and cold, as if reluctant to witness what unfolded below. The people called it the first seat, believing all rule and order flowed outward from its walls. Its avenues were aligned to the stars, its gates measured to shadows, its towers etched with vows older than speech. The city was governed not by kings, but by custodians, blood-bound lineages sworn to preserve balance between earth, sky, and the unseen deep. Their rule was quiet, ceremonial, and absolute. Every stone laid was blessed, every birth was recorded in ash and gold. Nothing was left to chance, for chance was believed to invite ruin. Beneath the streets ran chambers older than the city itself. In them the custodians kept relics drawn from the dark age before settlement, fragments of meteoric iron, petrified flames, and sealed vessels that whispered when the earth trembled. The people were told these were sacred burdens, not to be questioned. Obedience was framed as survival. At dusk, bells of hollow bronze rang across the plateau. Smoke rose from sanctuaries where offerings were burned, not to gods, but to memory itself. Forgetting was the greatest sin. To remember was to endure. Yet, even in these earliest days, cracks hid beneath perfection. Children dreamed of drowning skies, animals refused the lower streets, and the pale sun, fixed and watchful, never warmed the stone. The city endured, but it did not breathe. Something waited beneath it, patient as stone, counting the years. Generations passed, and the custodians grew certain that the city's survival was owed not to restraint, but to possession. The relics beneath the streets, once feared, became instruments of command. Their whispers were interpreted as guidance. Their warmth, once shunned, was welcomed. The city learned to draw strength from what it had sworn to contain. New halls were carved deeper into the plateau, beyond natural stone, where light bent strangely and sound lingered too long. There the custodians performed rites of extraction, binding unseen forces into sigils, engines, and pillars of living heat. Crops flourished unnaturally. Storms broke apart before reaching the walls. Enemies vanished without battle. The first seat became an object of dread across the surrounding lands. With power came hierarchy. Bloodlines once equal were ranked by their proximity to the deep chambers. Children were tested for resonance, their futures decided by how the sealed relics responded to their presence. Those who failed were sent to the outer districts, where the stone was thinner and the sun harsher. The city expanded, but its symmetry was lost. New towers leaned inward, as if listening. The old vows were shortened, their meanings simplified into commands. Memory was no longer preserved, it was curated. Records were altered to suggest the custodians had always ruled this way. Signs of imbalance multiplied. The pale sun dimmed further. The plateau trembled without warning. Some custodians aged rapidly, while others did not age at all. Still, the rites continued. To stop was to admit error, and error was the one thing the city could not contain. Beneath the deepest hall, something vast shifted, no longer patient. It had learned the rhythm of the city's hunger, and it answered in kind. The moment the city began to forget itself, its fall became certain. The archives, once sacred, were sealed not to preserve them, but to prevent contradiction. Witnesses to earlier customs vanished quietly. Stone tablets were ground down and reused. The custodians declared a new era, naming it eternal. Rituals grew harsher. Where once offerings were symbolic, now they were living. blood was believed to anchor power more firmly than ash. Processions wound through the streets at night, their chants low and measured, echoing like breath in a tomb. The people watched from behind latticed stone, afraid to look away, afraid to remember. The pale sun faltered, sometimes disappearing for days. Crops still grew, but tasted of iron. Water drawn from the cisterns reflected faces that were not present. Dreams spread like illness, shared across households, visions of a city inverted beneath the earth, mirroring every tower and street. Rebellion did not rise in arms, but in silence. Entire districts ceased speaking. Crafts were abandoned. Children stopped learning the old alignments. The custodians answered with purges, convinced obedience could still be restored. In the deepest halls, the sealed power no longer waited to be drawn. It surged upward, cracking floors, warping symbols, erasing boundaries between ritual and catastrophe. The custodians argued among themselves for the first time, each bloodline accusing the others of corruption. Above, the plateau fractured. Stones split like bone. The city's bells rang without hands to move them, their sound warped and broken. Memory, once guarded, now bled out through every crack. The first seat stood, but it no longer knew why. What followed was not a war of armies, but of thresholds breached too late to be sealed again. The custodians descended into the deepest halls, intent on reasserting control. They carried the last complete rites etched into their own flesh when stone could no longer hold them. Below, the city's reflection awaited them, an inverted expanse of architecture grown from shadow and memory, where every step echoed twice. The sealed presence rose to meet them, no longer formless, shaped now by centuries of use and hunger. It wore the city's symbols like scars. The struggle shattered meaning. Rites unraveled as they were spoken. Bloodlines failed, their authority unrecognized by what they had fed. The custodians died, not screaming, but pleading, offering remembrance in place of obedience. The presence accepted neither. Above ground, the city tore itself apart. Towers collapsed inward. Fires burned without heat. The pale sun finally vanished, replaced by a dim glow seeping from cracks in the earth. Those who fled found the plateau endless, looping back upon itself, refusing escape. The ground swallowed the inner districts first, streets folding like parchment. Bells fell silent as they were buried. The outer walls followed, dragged downward by forces that no longer distinguished stone from flesh. When the final chamber collapsed, the presence sealed itself again, entombed beneath ruin and silence. It did not sleep, it waited, surrounded by the memory of a city that had tried to own it. The first seat was gone. In its place remained only broken stone and a warning written nowhere, for there were no hands left to remember it. Long after the collapse, the plateau remained, smoothened by time and wind, as if the city had never been. No roads led to it, no birds nested there. Those who passed nearby felt unease without knowing why, and hastened away. Beneath the stone, the sealed presence endured, bound by its own access. It carried within it the memory of towers, chants, and vows, but no longer understood them. Memory without witness decays into weight. It pressed downward, deeper into the earth, taking the city with it into silence. Occasionally, the ground warmed. Cracks appeared, then sealed themselves. Wanderers spoke of distant bells heard beneath their feet, of dreams where streets folded inward and the sun refused to rise. Such stories never lasted. They were forgotten as easily as they were told. The world moved on above, building, erasing, repeating patterns without knowing their origin. The first seat was not mourned, for it had removed its own name from time. Its lessons survived only as absence, as the quiet fear that some powers are not meant to be mastered, only endured. Stone remembers longer than flesh. One day, the plateau will fracture again, and what lies beneath may rise altered, stripped of context and restraint. When that day comes, there will be no custodians, no vows, no memory to bargain with. Only ash without names, and a silence waiting to be broken.